This photograph is the only one I have of my father and my mother and myself together, just before Father went off to war.
Some campaigners have fought all their lives to get recognition for family they can't remember.
Come November, when it's armistice time, and the words "lest we forget" are in every paper. Mother used to say, yes, and rightly so, but they've forgotten about the Lancastria.
The Lancastria had embarked more than 6,000 troops escaping after the fall of France in 1940. Struck by German bombs, she quickly turned over and sank.
The top deck was a mess of blood and what have you. There was 3 bombs apparently hit it. I got off, I jumped off. It listed away to the one side, and that's how we finally landed in the water.
So soon after Dunkirk had snatched triumph from catastrophe, Churchill ordered the massive losses hushed up, and the disaster remained secret for half a century. On hundreds of sites right across Scotland, monuments like this were erected in memory of those who gave their lives for their country. Today, finally, this medal issued by the Scottish Government will commemorate those who went down with the Lancastria.
They came to remember the lost and the living, survivors, their families, politicians and public figures, united in remembrance of the disaster their country had told them to forget.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
HMT Lancastria, the Clyde-built former cruise liner, was bombed by German planes off the coast of France on this day 1940. She sank in 20 minutes. 4,000 people lost their lives, including 400 Scots, but the loss was covered up by the government for fear of its effects on wartime morale. 66 years on, those who perished were remembered publicly for the first time. France has now declared the vessel a war grave and banned diving around the wreck. Today the Edinburgh service was one of 3 held across the UK.
I was very affected by the service. It's never been mentioned very much, and today was a very good service.
The story of HMT Lancastria is one of private grief suppressed for public good. Campaigners say they now want a permanent memorial so the darkest day in British maritime history will never be forgotten.
Waters off the coast of Brittany are tranquil. There are few hints of the disaster which unfolded here 65 years ago. As British troops fled in chaos from the advancing Germans, the ex-Cunard liner Lancastria picked up more than 6,000. Off Saint-Nazaire, she was sunk by bombers.
You heard the bomber coming out of the sun. You couldn't see it. And then, as I was taking shelter, the bombs hit the boat.
At least 4,000 men died, but so soon after Dunkirk, Churchill ordered the tragedy to be hushed up. Today, victims' families brought their campaign to win official recognition of the secret disaster to the Scottish Parliament.
The silence which began almost 65 years ago with the D notice that Winston Churchill brought in has to a real extent continued to this day, and that has resulted in disappointment but also a serious sense of anger.
One MSP has opened a book of remembrance and is encouraging colleagues to sign. And for the moment, Britain's worst maritime disaster is marked only by a few hundred gravestones and a boy marking the site of the wreck. Kit Fraser reporting Scotland, Holyrood. Sounding the last post on the French coast last summer was John Hurst from Dundee, the son of a Lancastria survivor. His own son, Mark, is campaigning for official recognition of the disaster.
My grandfather was a survivor from the Lancastria. He was in 663 Company Royal Engineers and was obviously in the water for 5 hours after the sinking. left an incredible mark on his life afterwards. He talked many times about the Lancastria, and it left an impression on all the family members, but yet there was no supporting documentation at that time.
The Lancastria was a Clyde-built Cunard liner, requisitioned as a troop ship. She was involved in the evacuation of the British Expeditionary Force in 1940, but with more than 6,000 servicemen aboard, off Saint-Nazaire she was bombed and sank. 4,000 died. More casualties than in any air raid or battle, and more than twice that of Titanic. But Churchill decided the news would sap morale, and he ordered details to be hushed up. Families of those lost feel their sacrifice has never been recognised, and survivors like Royal Engineer Harry Pettit are hurt and angry about the cover-up.
20, 30 or 40 years after the war ended, I think all those who survived more or less put it behind them and carried on with their life, to improve, to do their job, to gain promotion, get married, have a family and so on. And it wasn't until we reached about the age of 50, 60 or more before the Lancastria sort of came back.
And other families have never been granted closure on their loss. Frank Withers was another lucky member of the Royal Engineers.
Some of the records of soldiers that died at Dunkirk, for instance, on the memorial, they weren't at Dunkirk, they was on the Lancastria. I know that for two facts. Two of my friends, they're recorded as being buried on the Dunkirk memorial. They weren't at Dunkirk, they was here with me on the ship, because they went down with the ship.
Today, an exhibition on the Lancastria disaster is mounted at Holyrood. MSPs will be asked to sign a book of remembrance and back a motion aimed at putting pressure on Westminster. Mark Hurst again.
Back in June for the 65th anniversary, we knew the French were putting on a big show. They had a military band of a French frigate, the local officials, and yet despite being invited, the British government chose to effectively snub us. That angered survivors who were present, who witnessed it in Saint-Nazaire this June, and also the relatives of victims. They feel very distraught and angry that the silence is continuing.
And they're determined that those 4,000 lives are remembered and recognised by more than just the handful of widows and relatives who cast wreaths into the waves off Saint-Nazaire last summer.